Hey rowers, coming at you with another technique, sort of physics of rowing type of video. This one, today, we're going to be discussing drag factor. So when I'm talking about drag factor, that is where this lever, on a Concept 2 at least, is over here. On other air machines, there's similar concepts. On water rowers, that is basically done by increasing and decreasing the amount of water in the tank. On magnetic rowing machines, if you have one of those, you can change the resistance, but that changes the stroke a little bit differently than changing the drag factor on one of these. It's changing the resistance through the entire stroke, and you have a constant resistance. So it's just a slightly different mechanic and not quite equivalent to changing the drag factor, but some of the concepts I'll be talking about still apply, so it might be worth watching regardless. So, the drag factor. On a Concept 2 again, you've got this lever and you can change it from 10 down to 1. And no, that is not just a level of how easy it is. It actually changes things considerably differently. So, when you have the lever at 10, on this Model C, it's actually really easy to see, but there's a big old piece of plastic that opens up this front area. As you drop it down to 1, that piece of plastic drops down and blocks off a lot of the front area. And what that's doing is it is blocking off how much air can get into the flywheel, which the flywheel then blows out through the edges. And what that means for how it feels is that it's kind of like if you had a blade with water. So think about sort of like rowing on the actual water. And if you have this all the way at 10, that is putting the blade all the way into the water, and you're pushing all the water along. As you drop it down to 1, that's just dipping the edge of the blade into the water. So you're pushing less water along. So when you're pushing less water, you have less of the blade in contact with the water. It feels a lot lighter. You can go a lot quicker. When you're putting the blade all the way in, it's a lot heavier. You're going a lot slower. And so that does sound like it's just a level of difficulty. But another thing that happens is on the recovery. So you start out taking the stroke, and then as you're coming back forward, in that time where you're coming back forward, the flywheel, the thing that's spinning around in there, blowing the air around, slows down. If you have a lot of air coming in, that's like when you, going back to the analogy of water, that's like if you're going through molasses. So you are coming around for the next stroke, your boat's going through molasses, it slows down a lot. So then when you take the next stroke, you have to push to get that boat moving again. Then, when the thing is all the way open and your lever is down at 1, then that's like going through water. So you take that stroke, you go back to the front end, your boat is just zipping through the water, and it's barely slowed down at all. So what that means for your next stroke is it's quick. The flywheel is still moving fast, so you have to be really quick to catch that flywheel. Let me grab a bike. So I got a bike sitting here. And I've got this wheel. So, spinning the wheel. Okay, this is pretty easy. Just spinning it along, tapping it along. Now what happens when I start spinning faster? I have to be quick with my hand to get that tap and to hit the wheel. I have to be really, really fast. Otherwise, if I'm slow, I miss tapping the wheel and then continuing to increase the speed. And it's the same way with rowing. If I am not quick on starting that stroke, I miss catching the flywheel and continuing to accelerate it, or at least I miss it for part of the stroke. So that's why when we're rowing, I'm always talking about engaging quickly and being quick off the catch. And as the damper goes down, that becomes exaggerated. You have to be even faster off the catch. So for that reason, people who are actually better, more advanced rowers will move the damper down because they can get that quickness and catch the flywheel even though it's spinning really fast. Now, the other thing that's going on with drag factor is it gets into sort of the details of where the power is coming from in each part of the stroke. So I've got some graphs here. So at the very beginning of the stroke, at the leg drive, so you're sitting at the front end, shins are vertical, sitting at the front end, and you get that leg drive. That's putting in about 60 to 70% of your power. And you have this initial upward jump of power, and then it peters off. Then you've got your body swing, and that gives you about 20 or 30% of the power. And then you finish it off with that arm pull, which gives you maybe 10% or so of your power. And so if you add all those up, then you get this nice curve of the stroke. And so this curve that I have right now is based on the pictures I drew and actually isn't the best. It should be shifted a little over to the left, flattened down a little bit. What you really want to get a quick upward drive of power, then to kind of stay level as you're continuing that power through the stroke, and then let it drop off. I just am not good at drawing graphs, and so that's what happens. But the reason I'm showing you these is that when you're rowing for a longer period of time, more than just a few strokes, you're trying to balance having as much area under that curve, so basically getting powerful fast, moving that curve up quickly, and then holding on to the power for a long time. You're balancing that with having this curve as low as possible because you don't want to wear out your muscles. You want to get a lot of power over the entire stroke, but if you have a really high peak, that means that you're going to wear out your back, your glutes, whatever part of that muscles are engaging to get you up to that high peak force will get worn out early. So having the damper at a lower position decreases that initial peak force that is required to get the stroke moving. And so that's another reason that you really want to be able to move that damper down. But again, in order to move the damper down and get good, powerful strokes, you need to be quick off the front end. So you might want to, so it's a good drill or a good practice to try rowing with a low damper setting. And then if you feel like you have the damper down here and you're trying to row and you're getting to about this part of the stroke before you actually feel the flywheel engage and feel that pressure on the handle, then move the damper up a little bit and find where the point where you have this lever, at which point you feel, oh, there's the engagement. And if that point is way up here, then start practicing sitting tall, being engaged, getting that forward reach, getting that suspension so that you can get immediate engagement with between the handle and the flywheel, and then you can slowly start to drop the damper down. And as you drop the damper down, then you will have less peak force on your body, which is, for one thing, easier on your body. It means less chance of injuring yourself. And for another thing, makes it so that you'll be able to maintain that power for a longer time, get better results, have more powerful rows, burn more calories if that's your goal. Whatever your goal is, you'll become more effective at it. So that is the relatively condensed version of drag factor. So one last thing, if you want to actually see your drag factor number if you're rowing in Concept 2, remember that that is possible. You just hit the menu button and then go to More Options, Display Drag Factor, and then take a few strokes, and a number will show up there. For myself, for reference, I generally row around 120. I've known people who are my same size who row down at 110. I've known people who are my size who are comfortable and do really well rowing at 150. It's really individual. Like I've said, encourage people to try and drop the drag factor as low as is comfortable, but it's up to you. Find what works best for you. Okay, that is all. Row strong. Have a good one.